Amen. Okay. Seated. Somebody can inform Dr. Ayo that we are studying. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, our visitors and the speakers. We will be starting with the program of today. This month in the Department of Social Development is called Social Development Month, wherein the department celebrate and commemorate special days. There are many programs that we will be having. One of the programs is the commemorations of the World Food Day, which we are commemorating today on the area of the social entrepreneurship. This is built to be a very small, concise discussions or seminar, wherein we will have speakers, we will have a lot of questions. We have got people online, and I'm hoping that they are able to see us, and they can see beautiful people that we have. Let me tell them that they missed, is called the breakfast webinar. So we had a 3-course meal breakfast from 7 o'clock this morning until this time. We need to apologize a little bit, send our apologies for starting late. One of the reasons we are starting late now is because of the same breakfast that was very good and very nice at Premier Hotel. Nutrition and a better environment and a better life for our own people. We have made progress towards building a better world. However, the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, points out that too many people have been left behind. People who are unable to benefit from human development, innovation, or economic growth are increasing. Our country's official unemployment rates today stands at 34.5%. Therefore, looking at that, we have also have 25.2% of our people living below the food poverty line. What does it mean? It means that 25.2% of our population live below 624 rand per day. This means they are under the threshold of absolute deprivation. They do not have the amount of money required to purchase the minimum required daily energy intake to maintain a healthy living. We have from 2002 to 2021 increased access to social protection in the country. our Chief Director, Alpha Mataku, to come and welcome us in this place, so that we know that all the dogs are tired and the way we need to go. I also need here, we have got our social partners. I think we will introduce them one by one as they come to the front. We have got our Acting Director General, Mr. Mtunu, who is, he was telling me he is a living social.
I will just take it from where you left it off, because you have already done some welcome remarks. Good morning, everyone. Let me take this opportunity to do whatever I've been requested to do, which is to welcome all of you to this webinar. Those that are online, you are all welcome, and we hope that you can hear us properly. This has been organized to achieve a number of things, and I think Mr. Nachepale has already alluded to programs and initiatives that we have come up with as a department, all in the name of addressing poverty. Whether we have made impact, that's a big question. Currently, as a department, we adopted what we call the sustainable livelihoods approach as a way of ensuring that we go beyond the protection arm. There are a number of programs and initiatives that we have come up with, the women empowerment programs, the cooperatives, and so on and so on. So what we would like to have an understanding around is whether we are on the right track in terms of embracing the social entrepreneurship. But I think the key aspect that we would like to focus on today is around understanding of what a social entrepreneur is. How is a social entrepreneur defined? Do we define a social entrepreneur in terms of the revenue generation, or are we defining them in terms of innovative vision, or is it both? And I think from that understanding, we will be able to be part of this webinar. We would like to appreciate your inputs in advance, and thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this webinar. On that note, let me thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Alpha, for welcoming everyone. You didn't tell them whether there are dogs here, but I think those that are safe are the ones online, because they are safe for now. For here, I don't know. There might be dogs as you go out of here, but we will ask the DG to make sure that those dogs are tied. Thank you very much. We will now want to begin with our seminar. The approach that I'm going to request we do, or we adopt now, there are people online. Can I tell you something very strange about this webinar? Apparently, few people there are not alone. There are 15 people in the same room. So in other words, if there are 15 people online, it's 15 times 15. How much is it? Somewhere there. So there's a lot of people that are listening to the webinar on the ground, because they ask Ms. Pumelele Ngowo from Finmark Trust to come to the front. And I will also ask Dr. Stembiso Bengu from the Chris Hani Institute, senior researcher at UJ, to come to the front. The seats, this one seat here, DG, you want to sit on the soft seat? Okay. DG is the owner of this. It's a moderator-in-chief. So the moderator-in-chief says the softness is for our stakeholders. What we will do is take it from there. The reason is this is Social Development Month, wherein we need to showcase the development approach in our communities. And you are contributing on the 13th of October, you are contributing to that. You'll still come back for a lot of things that are going to happen. So this is the start of things, and as the DG, as the moderator-in-chief has mentioned. So we will ask each one of you to come here, and you take, I don't know, you want to take not so lot of time, because the electricity can go. Global, we mean global. Over to you, Doc.
No. I'm used to it. The program director and the chief moderating person, the acting DG, my co-partners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me use this opportunity to say a happy, wordful day to you all. Experienced over the past 2.5 years, but also because of the changing and a very dynamic climate conditions. Over the past few days, some people have been complaining about the heat waves. And if you had watched what happened in a number of countries over the world, Ukraine, and the General Assembly met yesterday to really look at that. We have seen the positions. But essentially, what we are saying is that if two countries in the world, Russia and Ukraine, could account for about 60% of sunflower production in the world, whether it's oil, whether it's the vegetable component of it, could account for about. Africa is supposed to be the powerhouse of food production globally, but it's begging for food. Why? And this is despite the fact that Africa has the longest river in the world, River Nile. And Africa has the second deepest river in terms of volume of water, River Congo, in the world. And it has the second, and 41% in Asia. So, why are we still begging for food? It is quite challenging that Africa, as we speak today, is spending $78.1 billion annually on food importation. About 62% of our scarce foreign exchange earning on food importation. What do you want to use on manufacturing activities and productive engagement? If you spend 62% of what you earn in terms of foreign exchange earning to import things you can produce locally. So you can see the reason why Africa still remains a paradox. Poverty, hunger in the midst of plenty. So I always liken, and I'm sure the acting DG has heard this from me several times, I see Africa as a man sitting on a bullion chair, but is penniless. You know the worth of a bullion chair? These are countries that have done a lot of transformation in the agricultural something. And I was so happy when I met my brother this morning. You know, we confused him with his brother. I think Stabo, right? Yes. And he said, oh, I'm going to IITA. Do you know the meaning of IITA? Huh? That's International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. That's the first in the world to be located in the town that I did my PhD, Ibadan, in Nigeria. And I said, well, what are you going there? And he's French. So these are the kind of things we need to do. But essentially, what can we do to add value to it? So this is for agriculture. Now, social entrepreneurship. I put that within the context to be able to know that Africa is sitting on something it doesn't really appreciate. Now, we're talking about social entrepreneurship. Why are we talking about social entrepreneurship, particularly with respect to food security, as mentioned by the moderator? This is something that we think is really very important, is how can we use the triple bottom lines, economic profitability, social profitability, and environmental profitability to address the wicked development challenges we are facing, particularly in South Africa and many African countries. The issue of high level of poverty, high level of income inequality, and high level of joblessness. So, a traditional business is where the value is. That is where the job is going to be created. Now, if you look at the way social entrepreneurs across the world, even in advanced countries, you then realize that these are the people that are changing the concept of what they call shareholders to stakeholders. Shareholders, they only talk about the owners alone. But now they are broadening that spectrum to include stakeholders. Not only the shareholders, but really create what we call a kind of market niche that will be able to really ensure inclusive market by, one, generating jobs that are needed by people on the ground. Two, ensuring that they are empowering the communities where they live. It's another one, creating resilience of the communities. So once you do that, it becomes something that is really very important. The third element relates to their ability to develop skills. You see, many of our schools doing alone cannot solve the development problems. But until they tune the business within the social milieu, as well as the environmental conditions they find themselves, they must be able to contribute to addressing the problems of the society at every point in time. This is one of the things which we think is very important for social entrepreneurs. So, I know my time is very limited. My dear moderator and the acting DG, the panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we need to really think about how do we leverage the value of social entrepreneurs in food security. I have just about 2 to 3 things to mention here. Sources. And so many of this. And I saw it practically on the ground. Now, how can we all work together to support small-scale entrepreneurs to turn waste to wealth? Don't forget, between 25 and 35% of what we produce in our farm do not reach market. And when they reach market, they get damaged. How can we bridge the gap? So we need social entrepreneurs to help us invent innovative ideas on post-harvest management in order to promote food security in Africa. So this is one thing which I think is really very important. The second one is for us to really promote some team of social entrepreneurs that will help us to really, this is done properly. This is really, really done properly. And I'm so happy to say that there are some social entrepreneurs that have already started some initiatives around this. Those case studies that I told you of is part of what we're saying. Ethiopia is #1 country in the world with the largest number of extension workers, followed by China. Now, what they do now is that they have introduced their farmers to be able to replicate seedlings instead of depending on the corporate firms that give them seedling every year. Now farmers in Ethiopia, they do seed multiplications themselves. So this is part of the empowerment we need to give them. But this is what the Social Entrepreneur School really helped to do. And finally, within that particular trajectory, I'm happy my brother Thabo is here. You know, many of the meals should be left to the head of the household and the elderly. And the children that need the most nutrients, they're not given that. So these are the kind of values and practices that we need to change to ensure that we have access to quality food. So Dr. Tabo is here. I'm sure he'll be able to guide us in terms of how to really address that particular challenge more. Now, the real thing is, how can we as government, development partners, they're all sitting in my back, and those of us that are here, how can we work with social entrepreneurs to address the emerging challenges they face on a daily basis? One is the inability to get that to support them. And also, we also ensure that some of the regulatory frameworks are purely for the traditional business entrepreneurs. They are not for the social entrepreneurs. The regulatory framework needs to be changed to be able to allow this to thrive, the social entrepreneurs to thrive with their innovative ideas. And I strongly believe we can all do it together. Like I said, it is time for us to stop the talk. Let us walk the talk. Thank you.
Yeah, ne? Yes. Yeah. Dr. Ayo, I think this month is a social development month where we're exposing people to this. And in our discussions, as we start now, there's need of more of this. I'm saying so because the money is coming now. The money is coming now on our side. That we must know that this is the beginning where we need to preach and talk and then do what we're supposed to be doing. And it's so startling to see what we have been saying, Ayo, in terms of how Africa versus the world. Thank you very much, Dr. Ayo. Can we move to the next presentation? I will now, remember I'm the moderator, so I will choose who need to come. So without any discrimination, I have got the right to choose. Let's then welcome Ms. Shirley Jacobs from Allen Gray on the private sector perspective, social entrepreneurship, moving South Africa forward. Can we give a hand to Shirley? Guys, can you give a hand? Remember, we are competing with the online people that I'm listening.
Stress grants went to people under the age of 35. So that very same grouping that's across the continent is also the same grouping in South Africa that are unemployed. And I probably don't need to tell any of you how much that grant was. And if you went to the supermarket in the past week, you would know that that grant didn't take them very far in terms of putting food on the table. And so being it World Food Day, we know that, yes, Dr. A, you were very right. We're very lucky to have had breakfast this morning. There's way too many households in South Africa that don't have 3 meals a day, let alone are able to get by on the one meal that they are able to put food on the table for their families. Is to be in. When you know you're capable of doing something, but then you just can't get the opportunity to do that thing, to translate it into a livelihood, it's a problem. And so what we have is a looming crisis of despondency in this country. And I think the looting last year was case in point as to what happens when we don't provide opportunities to young people. It almost boils over and it becomes destructive. And so with that, we definitely have a role to play. At E-Squared Investments, where I work, which is within the Allen Gray Group of Philanthropies, we know that there's a call to action for us. And we know we have access to finance, and we choose to use that to particularly work with young people. And I get the privilege to work in a portfolio that works with social entrepreneurs. And so, Mr. Alpha, to your question, you said, do they focus on the income or do they focus on the innovation? They actually focus on both. Social entrepreneurs are able to look for new innovations, create new, obviously profit first, which means that 27% of them are able to create jobs. That's where their focus is, that's where their mind is at. And when interviewing social entrepreneurs, 78% of their time is spent just on thinking about how do they set up their social enterprise to create jobs. So 78% of their time or their mind space is thinking about how do I create opportunities for others. And so if you haven't gathered, I'm making the case for social entrepreneurship, right? Why we need to invest in social entrepreneurs. Further than this, I think this department, as well as the DTI and government of Flanders, have been working together to really look at what create the policies that's needed so that these social entrepreneurs who are out there doing their things get the environment in which they need to survive. So in the last 3 years, I have had the opportunity to invest 100 million rands. And with that, I've supported 14 social entrepreneurs. So 14 organizations that set up just to support more social entrepreneurs. With that, we've created 730 jobs. We've supported 579 micro entrepreneurs. So these are micro businesses happening either in townships or rural areas. And with that, it's translated into 1,158 jobs created by those micro entrepreneurs. So what we're finding is that for every one micro entrepreneur that we support, they create a job for 2 more people. And so as I deepen this conversation about the case for social entrepreneurship, I want to tell you a story. So I was on LinkedIn, and a friend of mine sent me a link to a young guy who was supporting a friend of his who comes from the community where his granny lives. And he helped him to put up a spaza shop because this young gent found out that this wasn't the only thing he had done. Sianda actually set up 2 companies. One was a mobile tracking platform. So coming from KZN himself, and his granny was from King and Glovo, he spoke to the local government and he said, I developed an app where I could track every household. And being able to do that, I'll give them a unique number, and you'll have a database of all the households in this village, and you'll be able to see what services are reaching that household. So he got to do that work. Whilst doing that work, he figured out that a lot of the gogos who lived there were taking transport, like 2 taxis to get to Impangeni, to go buy the groceries that they needed, and then come back with 2 taxis. Or if you have a gogo who lives in a rural area, you know that she hires a bakkie. She puts everything onto the bakkie. Sometimes she and her friends do it together so they can save money. And they sit sometimes at the back of that bakkie, and they come back to the rural area, which drops them at their home with their 10 or 20 kgs of maize and sugar and oil and everything else. And so in figuring this out, able to bring their groceries to their household. And that was the birthing of Kulula. If you want to Google it, it's Kuola. Kulula is probably one of the most clever innovations that I found at a rural area. Because, yes, it's Kuola. Yeah. And what I'm finding is that Sianda is not alone in innovating these ideas. For a lot of young people who are based in these communities, they know the problems, so they know the solutions. But what they need is to find someone who come alongside them and say, we'll support you. We set up a COVID relief fund. From that, we were able to help Kulula to get more transport, warehouse a lot more product, and get more households serviced. The young person will own this business full out, and at the same time, they're paying it forward for the next person to get a spaza. So this is going to be a revolving, paid forward model. What we didn't know is that this model was going to work so well that the 4th spaza went up 2 weeks ago, and they broke even by month 4. And so, and so when we can really support entrepreneurs who are based in their localities, who understand the context, when we can come alongside them and give them the support that they need, whether it's financial, infrastructural, and coaching and mentoring support, we find that they're actually able to thrive and create jobs for others. And then those jobs are able to create more jobs for others. So I'd like to just give you quick stats on how much it costs us just to put up. So for us, it cost us 160,500 rands to put up one spaza shop. And that's the initial investment we'll put in. That young person will pay back that spaza, will pay back for that in 3 years' time, and that gives an opportunity for a new person. Beauty. Amazi was training young women as nail technicians, and these young nail technicians would be able to go to their retail store. So they have a retail store. So if you're a young lady, you probably had your nails done maybe at an Amazi store, either in Sandton or in Cavendish if you're in Cape Town. And they were training young women, giving them the skills development to become nail technicians, and then they get to incubate them at their retail stores in the mall. When they came to us, to our investment committee, we challenged them to say, you're leaving value on the table because you have a retail store and you could sell products. Have you ever considered developing products? They're now rolling out 500 of those mini Amazi stores in the Woolies stores. So if you go to a Woolies in the next couple of weeks, you're probably going to find yourself in an Amazi store, and then you'll know, oh, this is the guys. And this means there's 500 jobs created for young women who's going to run these stores, with 2 women who will still support them. So that's 3 jobs. So that's 500 times 3. This is the potential of social entrepreneurs in this country. But my call to action is not that I can just tell you nice stories and you can hear about lives being, and can we be the ones who put our hand out to bring them up? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iyane. I'll give you my address. No, where I come from, so that we have that. Thank you very much, Shirley Jacobs. Can we give a hand of applause to Shirley? You can see entrepreneurship in action, and I think the 3 things that you mentioned, creating an enabling environment, skills development, access to finance, and mentorship becomes the key. Acting DG, the chief moderator, maybe what you could do, I don't know when you are ready, we have got the database of the 350, but we first give them some education from all of you, so that they can learn from that. Thank you very much. Colleagues online, we are going to open up for questions and comments at the end of the 4 presentations that we have, so that we can ask, when you ask questions, we have had all the presentations that we have. The 3rd presentations that we would like to take is from Dr. Stembiso Bengu, from the UJ. He's going to give us South African policy and legislation in support of social entrepreneurship in this country. Can we take this opportunity for him? You're here. You're not talking like us. It's nice.
So maybe let me start by saying that a while back, the Department of Social Development, obviously, when it changed from social welfare to development, and then began to integrate quite systematically the issue of moving beyond the issue of social protection to social investment, but to social development, which is when then it began to speak about sustainable livelihoods, in which, and I remember at that time, cooperatives then became one of the trump points. If you remember, by the way, these initiatives were, the co-ops comes at a time, local economic development in KZN. We were given a case study. There was SAPI around Mduba. They do trees and then paper. And there was a particular case there in which some young men who were actually harvesting bees. And so the family, these family people, they have experience in this. And so they began to, they found out that there were bees within some of these sappy forests. And so they began to harvest them. Now, obviously, without telling SAPI, unfortunately. So the implication of that is that the head of security of SAPI was informed about the smoke, because how they harvest them, part of it is about burning and then smoke to essentially disorient the bees, and then they are able to extract the honey. So when the head of security then found out what was happening, he actually organized these young men who were part of the one household to actually of bee harvesting, but not on the actual supply side, because that requires a particular skill. But then, unfortunately, the stipulations of the Cooperative Act was that a cooperative cannot be formed by people of the same family. And so, they were then told they must bring within the cooperative non-family members so that they fulfill the legislative framework. And so they did. Now, remember, by the way, bee harvesting is a specific skill. So now in bringing others, they bring other young men, and now these young men that they are bringing, the others who are not part of this family, so who don't do this thing, they have been told by the department that the department will put money if they become part of the cooperatives. So you have people that don't have the skill on cooperatives, you know. And even though I have been outside of this area for quite a while, it just happened that at the SATU Congress that was in 2 weeks back, there were some people that were meeting there, and I happened to be, by chance, to be dragged in by one of them. And even, by the way, currently, apparently, actual cooperatives, there are 3 key cooperative bodies that are operating within South Africa that are still quite alive. Many of them actually are linked to for instance, we have the Dora Tamara that is linked to the Communist Party. Then you have the South African Cooperative Network. And in those discussions, it became upper and development. And so there seems to be, and one of the key challenges, and this is not new, and maybe some of the key points that I think, maybe let me start by mentioning the first one. In my earlier work with social development on co-ops, one of the biggest challenges I think we have that maybe I would say is important for us to caution is to run away from looking at now social entrepreneurship as the silver bullet. Silver bullet. In other words, the panacea to all our problems. Yes, we must be careful of that. South Africa is a complex system. And so the problems of South Africa will not be solved by social entrepreneurship, neither by co-ops alone. You know, so that's one of my critiques, especially even this whole mantra around small businesses. We have higher levels of skills, even of innovation within their populations. I mean, part of the challenge that we have in South Africa, even though you are correct, there is now a growing number of people with degrees who are young, who are unemployed. But the actual stats from stats, the latest one, 67% of the unemployed youths are what we call NEET, not in employment or education and training. Right, so poor, unemployed, unskilled. So that's the challenge. And so I think we should indeed invest in them. But I think we should understand that the complexity, that our challenges are much more complex, and that and so they will make a contribution, but they will not solve all our challenges of unemployment, all our challenges of poverty, inequality, but they are significant that we do them. You know, and one of the significant things I think that is important, particularly for social development, is to find how there are linkages between social development, agriculture, for instance, small business development, but also DTI. Because part of the challenge is, Mondli will remember that when we were doing the assessment, we were told, you are a national project. Go to the national government. We won't assist you. And so by the time we came 4 years later, Mondli will attest, the land was now eroding. There was soil erosion on the land that had been given 4 years prior, nothing happened, essentially because of the disjunctures within the state institutions themselves. So that is one. Two, these women, they had then started to produce school uniforms for children. They actually even did some wonderful handcraft work, which, by the way, some of it was procured for the opening of the Maponya Mall, if you remember, when it was opened back then around 2010, 2009 and those. So it is the integration that essentially then enables or facilitates to be able to grow these, you know, and so with the silo kinds of, it's not necessarily the silo mentality, but it's the challenge is obviously in our departments. It's not necessarily because they are led by political heads who then obviously every 5 years, because there's an election, and so the program of government, the DG, I heard there was an acting DG, so the DG can come up with with a 5-year plan. This is going to happen for 5 years. That there's elections in 2024. We know that in 2022, 23, the political principles is under pressure because we must having similar programs that are supposed to collectively, imagine if these three departments, there is synergies between them, there is a clear strategy to say, okay, we are now pursuing social entrepreneurship. These are the systems that are required. These are the government support that is required. These are the policy instruments, regulative instruments that are required. How do we work together to make sure that in the next 5 years, maybe they'll say, maybe not even 5 years, in the next 10 years, there's a clear plan. These are the programs. These are the deliverables that must come out of it. Things, you know. So we have one. Two, I mean, the other reality, unfortunately, is that the democratic dispensation in South Africa, unfortunately, demobilized communities. I mean, the only form of community mobilization in South Africa is two. For those who want political office, join an ANC branch or church. What else is there? There isn't. Okay, Kaizer Chiefs again, yes. And it is going to be put to them. And once the money comes, the cooperative ends. Because the fight starts for the money. Because there is not an organic mobilization. And so one of the things, maybe it might be useful, you know, and obviously I know there are a lot of challenges, especially with churches lately. I mean, I even wrote a paper a couple of years back and called it Casino Christianity. But, you know, there's a whole challenge around this thing called of people who have not thought at all about entrepreneurship. You know, and so there's a lot that has to be done. And unfortunately, I don't think our system has helped, because in fact, I would argue that in South Africa, we don't have entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs much. What we have had, and the government has not helped us, what we have is tenderpreneurs. It's not entrepreneurship. If I have connection to you, I start I register a company this year. Next month, I start tenderpreneuring, providing food for this event like this, do that. No entrepreneurship whatsoever. So effectively, there's no capacity to actually, and which is why it's a crisis, because all of these people who are in these businesses involving the state. Thank you.
I've got mine. You can give me the Thank you very much. Can we give a hand to Stembiso on the social policy and the legislation to support social entrepreneurship? I think what Stembiso was saying, I think you were giving the background why we should have social entrepreneurship in the country. This is exactly that. Exactly all this is that there's a need for social entrepreneurship in the country. And I think if we bite slowly, small chunk at a time, we'll be able to win. And I think it's very exciting. We have got our last, I hope to give you the whole 2 hours, but no, I will give you. You are the last speaker for the day before we sum up and have got questions and comments. And welcome to those that join us. They were online, so they decided to come in. Thank you very much. Generating.
You'll be looking there and looking there. I want you to look at me. I know I'm a brown bone, but you can see me, right? Thank you so much. And I think this discussion has been very great. I've loved the Bonga Sianda story, because what I'm about to talk about is there are so many young people just wishing for a Sianda in their lives. Someone who's going to say, I'm here to help. And how can I help you? Because if Bonga was on his own, trying to figure things out on his own, benefit the mother that collects it on behalf of the child. Once there's a grant in the household, it benefits everyone. If we are going to buy food, it's not going to be for my child and me. My sister's children, Magogo, everyone benefits from the grant. And what we are trying to do with this project, we are saying, how can we link grant recipients to other economic opportunities? And what is the assumption that we are making when we're making this kind of, developing this kind of a project? We are saying that let's not assume that people who are receiving grants are just happy to stay there. We are talking about people who have tried so many things to also do better in their lives. But the sweeping statements is always that, they're lazy, they're just happy. Are we really pay? We are not going to look for the easy way out. We are going to take the hard way. Because if we discuss this project, people will be like, hey, what do you think you can do better? These people have given up. How are you going to do it? And we're saying we want to do exactly that. Because at the end of the day, we must have given ourselves an opportunity to say, we tried something, and this was the outcome. There is a way to make it better in this manner, right? So as Finmark Trust, we have engaged the Department of Social Development, we've engaged SASSA, we've engaged NDA, and we were proposing to them a system where we say, SASSA, what if SASSA can play a bigger role than just dispersing and paying grants? Because SASSA is everywhere you go. In all local municipalities, you find their offices. People know where SASSA is. They've been queuing there for years. It is, but somewhere at home, there is that SRD grant recipient who is a graduate. And we are saying we don't want to end at that target of a child support. We want to use the child support as an entry to a household, so that we can understand better who else is in the household and how can we help them if they can benefit from this kind of support, okay? So that is, in a nutshell, the project that we are trying to implement. But now, I've told you about employment, I've told you about entrepreneurship. The reason we are targeting people who are already beneficiaries of social protection receiving a grant, it's because the grant, as much as we can say what we want, it affords people access to basic services such as food. People can actually buy food. And if you have a conversation with someone, at least who has had a meal, even if it's one, at least they can actually even listen to you. Imagine talking to someone about employment and entrepreneurship, someone who has not had food in 2 days, and here you come. You talk. If you follow and ask what happened, you find that some women, after attending the training, the husband will beat you up because why were you doing there? Are you looking for other men? But if you do not understand the social dynamics and other household issues that people are facing, even in communities, if there is a high incidence of alcohol abuse in a community, and then you want to get young people and place them in jobs having not addressed that issue, they will join today, work for 5 minutes, hey, they go, because now they need what they need. But if you go to a community with an understanding of other dynamics that are at play, you are in a position to come up with better initiatives to support people. So how do we do this now? We've been in a process where we are engaging stakeholders, because we've talked about issues of collaboration here, to say if we are to do anything and anything at all, we need to collaborate better, because we are leveraging on existing initiatives already, right? So we need to engage the different departments that offer initiatives. We need to engage agriculture. We need to engage Department of Small Business Development and understand what is it that they offer in their respective departments. And how do we collect this information? Because now we want to be the go-to people, where people in the rural areas where we are going to pilot this project is preventing young people from accessing opportunities. Is it household issues? Is it community issues? What are those barriers? And we think once we've understand the barriers, we then want to do the second assessment that will assess the market. What are the economic opportunities that exist in those areas where we want to participate? Because we are moving away from this notion of poor people can just take any opportunity that you give them. You are poor, take it. You have no other option. We are trying to move away from that. We are saying, go in, understand their barriers, understand issues of skills gaps. Once you've done that, study the market in the area. Are there TVET colleges in the area? We've talked about everyone wanting a certificate of them. That, what kinds of practical other training, programs can be made available to young people in those specific communities. And Department of Agriculture to make inputs available. We want to play that role, bridge that gap, that information gap, and bring the information for people to be able to access. And once we've done that and people are linked to other economic opportunities, we then assess how we monitor this going forward. And that is, in a nutshell, how we plan to contribute. Because I think what we've been asked here is, how do we now walk the talk? We are always talking, what are we doing practically to try and support people, to also explore other economic opportunities and sort of do better with their lives and generate better livelihoods. People are hungry. How do we make sure that they are able to then put somewhere? We want to walk this talk. We might not be successful, but if we are successful, then it's a good story, and then it allows for scalability of the initiative and how do we sustain it. But that's the future that we see, to say how do we bring services to where people are, where they can easily access, easily understand, don't have to take 5 taxis to go and find information. You just maybe walk to a SASSA office and you get information and you get supported. But that's just the vision that we are presenting. It is likely to start implementing next year in 2023, but for now we are just doing engagements with stakeholders and introducing the project. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much. I always requires that you give a second hand to beat 150 participants on the bioscope. Yeah, they are growing. We're growing. Thank you very much, Phumelele, for the presentation, and thank you very much. Let me thank the speakers. You see, the acting DG, I think in the next EXCO, we just decided to call them. Then they talk the whole day. You have got the whole day? We'll pay you. Thank you very much. I think as we celebrate our Social Development Month, especially the World Food Day breakfast seminar that we have, it is very exciting. This is just a glimpse of what we can do. This is a glimpse just to open our minds in terms of that. We had, from global perspective on social entrepreneurship, to the private sector perspective on social entrepreneurship, and also generating better livelihood for grants beneficiaries, and also TUT, that they've done that. This is what we want, and I think we are beginning to tap into what you described, Dr. Ayo. At this moment, let me allow questions, comments for our panel that are sitting in a very comfortable sofas here. You will tell me how many hands are there. Just watch, or else you should show us who has got. But we will start in-house. There's a hand there. Can you get the mic that side?
There's a
on
mic
the table.
here.
Oh, by the way, it's like our exco bedroom. There's mic in front. Then we have Tabo, Annie, Monty. Any more hands? Alpha? Some more hands, what you are thinking? Ma'am?
Thank you
Over
so
to you.
much for the opportunity. Greetings to you, Program Director, and thank you for facilitating this session so well. I'd like to just thank the Department of Social Development for inviting me, Umpo and Mondli. My name is Pamandla Mpikeleli. I work for the South African Sugar Association. I've really enjoyed the talks that have come from the heart and not from the slides this morning. I think we are getting a bit slide fatigue or TV fatigue or computer. You know, it's actually refreshing to actually talk. It's interesting that something so simple, you know, has eroded and we must bring it back like that. But just my comments, maybe let me start to say that Finmark Trust and Alan Gray is busy and just for, if I can speak for the South African Sugar Association on the enterprise development, social entrepreneurship side, we also do have a partnership with a social entrepreneur called Umgibe Trust, and they work in the areas in KZN, and they work with youth in the agricultural space. They provide the skill, as I outlined. We also provide some resources in terms of startup capitals for food production in those areas. And then we also provide the market under our enterprise and supplier development. We buy some of their produce. But, you know, they also working very hard. Umgibe is sort of that middle man person. I mean, I wish I would have known this. It actually would have been better for them to speak on their own, because Mom Joy is actually quite passionate about what she does. And I think Oh, she spoke last year. I'm glad I missed it. So we work with her. That we support that initiative, and we are so proud of how it's growing. Like you mentioned, Cheryl, they were grown into seedlings. They would buy them back from the community. So that is how you would raise the capital. So if you're a community member that wanted to start a business, you grow these seeds into seedlings, we buy them back, we give you capital. So we would distribute 10,000s, 15,000s, 20,000s, and those sort of capital startups in that community. And it was amazing what the youth and the women in that community did with those. They started spaza shops, they started tent companies, catering. They did all sorts of businesses. And unfortunately, that agreement had to come to an end because I think Wildlands Trust's sort of strategy changed. They didn't want to play into that space anymore. And so at this moment at SASA, I am particularly looking for those kind of partnerships because the way we work is that I have a team of about 2 or 3 people in my unit, so obviously capacity is an issue. So we are always partnership-based. We are always looking to work with the likes of Wildlands Trust or the likes of Umgibe, who are in the community, who are actually living with these conditions and doing this people's. But so my question was, or my comments was, so in my area at SASA, I would say this is the program we're doing, and our future plan is to continue to work in the social enterprise, rural or township space, and we are looking for partners.
Welcome, SASA, South African Sugar Association. Yeah, you know sugar they sell, so they've got money. Dr. Tau. You press the button there.
I'm used to preaching without these mics. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very excited to hear some of these presentations. Very beautiful. Dr. Ayodele, there's a number of things that you raised that I thought were very exciting. And of course, I want to find out from you, how do we solve some of those problems? And I wish that education would be here. The same with agriculture. And I'm sure that they are part of you. One of the questions you spoke about, that our education should be market reality or related, in the sense that our education system, our market should dictate our education in South Africa. And for me, I think that's the most important thing because, as you said, there's a disjuncture. What our students are learning from the class and what they are doing outside the classroom is 2 different things. And I know this. I served at Wits University, and we struggled with those things. But also, some of the things that came in my mind was when you talked showing South Africa or Africa with the rest of the world. My question is, why is it like that? Why is Africa failing? If we fail to put just simple food on the table compared to Brazil and the rest, and here we're not talking about the country, we're talking about the continent of Africa. Why are we failing? What is it that we're not doing right? And you also mentioned something like, which I want to know, how do we leverage the value of extended again? My question is, how long? Because, and what are we doing with that? Because as far as I'm concerned, or how I see it, I see us in a time bomb, and the only way to deal with these young people is to give them this money. Not much of a skill, and I know that that's what social development is trying to do, skilling these young people. But how do you ensure that they are skilled? Because I see our young people receiving this this money every month, and what after that? So those are some of the challenges the questions that I had. Dr. Pengu, you spoke at Mass, brought a lot of challenges to us. One of the challenges is you say our challenges are complex. My question is, how do we deal with them? How do we solve them? Also, is the state a responsibility in the data and all? How do we help them? So then they also are integrated in the whole picture of South Africa. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I allowed the two speakers to go long because they are from outside. I think as we are left with, there was a one from Mondli, 1 minute, Alpha, 1 minute or less. Then I can see others. There is Rogers first, then this young, the young people that are here. Then we have got Paul, Sir, and Dr. Pell. Let's do that so that we have got enough time to hear the answers. Remember, they need to provide us with some answers. Mondli?
Thank you to our panelists first for just unpacking what is this social entrepreneurship agenda all about, government. Dr. Bengu made mention of some of the things we are to change as government. First, putting in place those requirements that are not necessarily creating an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to thrive. He made an example of a family that was doing very well, but the requirements were saying, no, you must not all come from the same family. And it meant everybody else has to come, and before there was money, there was a problem. So, Dr. Ayew, I wanted to ask, where social entrepreneurship is doing well, there is high levels of skills, innovation, education, and in our country is the opposite. Are we not aspiring to use an instrument that will fail in consideration of our context? Because our context is unemployed, unskilled.
Not like but I mean directly straight, ask questions so that we can allow them to talk. Alpha, you are next. I'll just go by. Oh, she's saying yes. Yes. Alpha?
Oh, thanks. And thanks very much to the experts on social entrepreneurship. I think we are now beginning to have a sense of what entrepreneurship entails. A lot of things. Are we really willing? Because some of the challenges you have articulated, and you are very fortunate because you are not working for government. You have articulated a lot of challenges that we are not hearing for the first time. We know about them, but we can't talk about them, some of us, because we are working for government. We still want to get our salaries. So basically what I'm saying is the challenges are well known. The solutions are there. We do not have a scarcity of ideas and innovations. But it's not happening. And that's why I'm just throwing this question to you to say, are we really willing to address this challenge? Every day we listen to the radio, then it's almost a cliche. Unemployment, inequality, blah, blah, blah. And we have over-characterized these problems. But are we really?
But my response, delay. Wait. Why is that? It takes a lot of time. Like there's no support.
Thank you. Pearl?
Thank you very much, Program Director. I'm glad that I was actually invited to come and sit here because a lot speaks to the heart of the direction that even engagement with young people should be taking. I do appreciate that the common concerns are shared as received through the speakers as well, highlighting the issue of the imbalance between the education system that we have in South Africa with this new age, entrepreneurship, because social entrepreneurship remains new, I think, to a lot in South Africa. Hence, you still get critics that are saying we don't have entrepreneurs. We do have entrepreneurs in South Africa, heaps of them, to say the least, but they remain unsupported, they remain under-resourced, and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting for me to have received these presentations, because social entrepreneurship is rapidly evolving into that synergistic mix of conventional management skills, focusing on the context and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting to hear, even from the speakers, in pilots that have been tested and proven to work, to give us guidance as a country, and I think also as a department, to say, if you were to pitch social entrepreneurship, or even administrative entrepreneurship, or even incubative entrepreneurship, because there's many types of entrepreneurships, hence we're saying social entrepreneurship is new in this space. At which level, if there are countries, maybe from progressive countries, at which level should we pitch this concept of entrepreneurship? Should we start it at kindergartens? Because we also don't want to lose the element wants to be a champion. We all want to be seen as, you're a hero. You came with this new age social entrepreneurship, which is supposed to fix all our problems in as far as youth and employment issues are concerned. But what I want to establish, maybe from the presenters as well, because I want to believe that you've engaged with literature even outside ourselves as developing countries, but maybe countries outside of South Africa, to say, if we're talking collaboration and we're talking partnership, and I'm glad that all of you in your presentations have emphasized the issue of partnerships and collaborations, if we're going to foresee, social entrepreneurship. I'm also glad that collectively we are recognizing that it's not only government that can actually take this off, and for it to work with us to deal with the problems of our country. We're saying it's important to bring private sector into the mix. It's important to bring civil society, and case studies that you have tapped on to say, for this to flow, it must be a top-down or a bottom-up approach in order for us to be able to sink in and really make sense of social entrepreneurship, and for it to work for us as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can we have Paul? Then we have got those two guys there at the back. Then you are the last one.
Okay, it's not my question. I think it's from Matlosi Tati.
From on the line. No, there's two Paul. Let's start with the women in Paul.
Okay, sorry.
There's two Paul. Let's start with Paul here, the one on this side.
Thank you, Program Director.
So you need to be, I think there's so many questions, ne? They will forget. So let's do quicker so that they will be able to assimilate all of them.
Okay. And thank you for the presentations. This was actually eye-opening. I think what I gather from the presentation that South Africa is actually venturing into. So maybe we might have, as government, look into how we can have coordinated policy directive to ensure the success, and linking that to the SDGs. I think 1, 2, and 3 are speaking about elimination of poverty, and I can't remember exactly. But are we in the right direction to change how we do things to be able to achieve our SDGs? The second one is, at this moment, with the challenges presented by respective presenters, does it mean we need our...
Question? Push your mic.
Yeah, so that is a reading from Matlosi Tati. Matlosi Tati is from the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. She's asking conditional grants concept and option for South Africa. It's just a question. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
The enormity of the challenge in the continent. We've got to do things at the right levels, things that can actually shift the needle and make an impact. If you could comment on the scale. Maybe, Chairperson, next time create a space in those soft seats for social entrepreneurs of note as well, to talk to us about this particular subject, what they've done under the circumstances that have been mentioned here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Roger. Straight to the point. I think that's a very good point. We have got one hand left. Yeah, it's you. You can.
South African eyes. And when you look in South Africa, we have this obsession with policy, and we don't have a problem with policy. Our policy is very simple. When we wake up in the morning, is to unite our people and to build a prosperous South Africa. That is our policy position. It's a very simple policy position, is to unite South Africans across all color divide, class divide, and to create a prosperous South Africa. A very, very simple policy position. The rest are just plans. The RDP, ASGISA, GIE, those are just strategies, characteristics of what China did in terms of opening up and reform. When China realized that it was poor and it had an ambitious plan to alleviate poverty, the rest that don't have growth, the state doesn't have money. And then, because they're wise, and this comes to my point, actually it's direct to Prof. Ayodele, the good friend of the School of Government as well. Then President Deng Xiaoping said, it doesn't matter if the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. And what it means, they adopted a classical socialist system based on Marxism. But then they said, let us create our own socialism, but with one ingredient, with Chinese characteristics. Because this socialism that you copy from the classical form in my computer I was implementing, the problem is that we implement in a wrong context. The reason why GIE failed, the reason why GIE failed is because the context was not suitable at the time. Growth skyrocketed, but employment conditions went the other way around. It's because we have never put down conditions like China said to say, when you own Coca-Cola, for example, for that growth to be distributed and contribute to employment, 30% or maybe 40% must be labor intensive, and the rest, 60%, can be mechanized. And in the same process, within 10 years, we give you space to train that 40% of the labor force so that in 10 years it can transcend to mechanized labor. So when you mechanize, you don't retrench them. In these 10 years that you use labor-intensive methods, in the same process, you train them. So in 10 years, we're transitioning to the fourth industrial revolution. That is the mistake that we made with GIE. Our goal was to distribute growth, but within a free market system. In China, they did the same thing. They had their own GIE, but it was not within a free market to implement reforms. Like you say, Africa contains the food reserves that can feed the whole world. Africa does not need the world, actually. The world needs Africa. I always say that. If Africa was to close its trade, the world economic system would collapse. But we think other way around. We think sanctions and all this, we cannot make radical shifts. But we can make radical shifts. Your cobalt, all these things that they need from the DRC, your food supplies and all that comes from Africa. So I think we just need leadership and to change the context in which we implement. By context, I'm referring to, I said to my colleague when I was speaking on Tuesday, area-based development is very important. A strategy that you'll implement here in Arcadia for development may not work in a rural village in somewhere in the Eastern Cape or in Limpopo. So the problem is not implementation, it's that in what context are we implementing? Even this talk is a final point, DDG. Even this talk that we are giving here in English with different accents, if you were to give it in a place where people cannot understand or speak English, you are...
Each one of you, the speakers, our partners, little friends that are here, an opportunity to answer questions and talk. I don't know how to start. I will start. Let me go by this role. I'll start by Ms. Mpumelelo Ngobo, Finmark Trust, and answer the questions on that. Then followed by the Dr. Ayo, and then Shirley, And then lastly, we'll go to Stemi Sobeng to answer those in that order.
Thank you, Program Director. I don't know, we're okay sitting?
Yeah, okay, sitting.
Thank you. Yeah, there were a couple of questions. I think we had touched on the first, the lady from SASA, in terms of what is it that we are doing. I think I've touched on that. I know it's brief, but there are details, and I think since they are in KZN, there might be further opportunities to expand on what we plan to do in KZN once we've conducted those market studies. There might be a potential partner. We always open to that, but it's a conversation that we are very much happy to have. And I think there were two related questions as well on, the issues of scale, the reach, because we've talked of 3 provinces for now, and I think I had indicated even in my presentation that we know we get this a lot, because there is a need, to do this. There are so many unemployed people, and if we had all the resources, I think we would all want to implement in all provinces, including your Northern Cape, those people. But I think we are calling this a pilot, and within this pilot, we are looking at different dynamics. So for each province, we are looking to have a combination of rural sites and urban sites, so that we can start to look at the level of effort that is required, where people are really further from opportunities, how much effort is required, and what kinds of initiatives are likely to be successful in those areas, and also the urban setting as well, where we assume people are closer to economic opportunities. So it will be a test, and I think there is why for us it's important that it works, so that we can have this proof of concept and continue to look.
Hours will not be enough for us. Yeah, but I just mentioned in the past, then, there are a number of them. In fact, if I limit myself to what has been implemented over the past 3.5 years in my second coming to South Africa, one of the first things that we did was the issue of Youth Entrepreneurship Action Hub, which is where we say, okay, because when I came in June 2019, the quarterly report of the statistical agency was that about 72% of South African MSMEs died before their 3rd year anniversary. And I felt so bad, pained in my bone marrow. And I said, why could this happen? And then I look at it and then realize that there are 3 major things. First is that the cognate entrepreneurship skill is not there. 2, if they do have it, they're struggling to have access to the market. And if they do that, access to finance is a challenge. So we then said, okay, why can you have a program that will combine those 3 elements? And we did it for 2 cohorts. And the idea is we made sure that within the period, you are exposed to what we call cognitive entrepreneurship skills. But then, before you leave, give you the seed money, which you didn't know. But some were given the list was about 50,000 rand. But they didn't know that was what we wanted to give them at the end. Some were getting closer to about 300,000, and they got it. So, but the essence is, this is just for us to really say, it is doable. That's the first one. The second one is what we call the low-cost internet access, because we realize that SMMEs have very difficulty in having data access at rural communities. So we did it. We initially launched it in 4 communities, 1 per province. 1 in Western Cape, 1 in Eastern Cape, 1 in KwaZulu-Natal, and the other one in Free State. We launched it, and we made sure, 1, it must be a young South African entrepreneur that was really behind it. 2, before you get it, for the first time, you must get what they call a licensing permit from the regulatory institution. That is for the first time to be given to small-scale enterprises. So they did it. And when I was launching the first one in Port Shepton in KwaZulu-Natal, we realized that, one, while Vodacom and MTN were charging between 55 rands and 120 rand per gigabyte, the one we launched in Port Shepton is 5 rand. And they were running it. They connected it to schools, connected it to public hotspots, like hospitals and police stations, and even bus stations. Just for 1 year for them to run it and see how it works. And within about 6 months, they were connecting over 4,000 users that were paying on their own. So this is just part of this social entrepreneurship thing. And also, if you look at a number of other things, I'm just giving you those small ones. Now, we're implementing digital skills in the 3 districts that were identified under the district development model. The OR Sambo, Etukweni, as well as Waterberg. Now the idea is, and we're targeting on youth that are not in employment, education, or training. And we have done it. In fact, we are partnering with Harambe to be able to do this. And they've been able to place some of them that have gone into training into jobs. This is part of the thing with them, because they cannot do it on their own. It needs, well, we thought it was being wicked. A professor that is, advisor to the government everywhere. It was when he died we realized what he was trying to do. That the certificate may not be enough for you. But now, having gone through that for 3 years, the guy competes even with his lecturers in terms of the practical reality of engineering. Because we have seen many people that studied computer science without touching computer. So that's the reality. We have to ensure that what we are taught in school is aligned with the labor market requirements. Otherwise, your skill is, your certificate is useless. That's why we depend on government to give us jobs, not to be employers of labor. That's one of the missing links. Now, I know, Mr. Moderator, there are a number of things, but I just want to give you one thing. In Africa, I went through public school through my life, but I'm happy. Although people do not believe that all my schools were in Africa. But I had the privilege of managing people that graduated from all the Ivy Leagues in the world. That's the privilege, so we can't take that one away. Now, the issue is this. There's a difference between the educational system in Africa and those in most of the advanced countries. Let me tell you, in kindergarten school in the US, national volunteerism is there and is very inherent in their system. We need to really focus more on that. Now, I will just try as much as possible to summarize because there are a number of things. Now, in terms of what we do, in addition to one of the things we do in terms of social entrepreneurship, the UN is known for one thing, the convening power. In fact, there are some communities in the world where they don't listen to their government. But when UN goes there, be able to bring them together and say, okay, this is what we do. Now, because of this initiative driven by DST, we said, okay, we will take this beyond South Africa. Initially, we started the first one just like a joke. Yeah. In March, we were in Saudi Arabia. We made it happen. People could not believe it. And we said, okay, from there, let's take it to the world, the UN General Assembly. We just came back about 3 weeks ago, where now many countries are now referring to South Africa as a pioneer in social entrepreneurship. And we're planning to say, okay, we will take it from there to the African Union Summit come February next year. So these are things we try to do together to say, okay, because the role of the UN is to bring about what they call the South-South collaboration. Now, what are the good things in South?
And the sugar tax and the number of people that are going to lose their jobs. And I think there's definitely synergies in the way in which we can think about how we're supporting those in the sugar communities. So to that point, someone asked a question about what happens to the SRD and how do we support these. So I think and now it's back. I think, Tama, it was you who asked that question. I think To Dr. Ayer's point right now, he spoke about volunteerism, and I was going to suggest something. I work with an organization called SLATO. It's a platform where young people can go on, they can do micro-learnings, or they can do a micro-job, and they earn a currency called SLATO. That's ZLTO. Yeah. And so they earn SLATO, and then they're able to use this at a local vendor, or they're able to use this at Takealot, for example. And they can buy products with this currency. And I think there might be room for us to start to think about how do we get young people to not just get a handout in terms of cash, but how are we getting them to either do micro-learnings, so they build skills, or how are we getting them to volunteer and do micro-jobs and then get remuneration for that? So I think there's really clever ways in which we can... it's really thinking about a PTY that's not solely focused on profit, but putting social impact first. So some of these entities are hybrid entities where they set up a non-profit and they set up a for-profit, and the profits from the for-profit actually drive the impact that happens at a non-profit. There's a number of these structures, and they're easily available on the internet, but that's really the difference between thinking about what a normal PTY is and what a social enterprise is. Someone asked a question, are we really prepared to address the challenge? I think yes. I think the answer to that is yes. There's a lot of challenges in South Africa, but I think the fact that we all are on this room, virtually and in person, and that we're all banging on about the same thing over and over, I think that, yes, I think people are prepared to take on this challenge. I think it's about what are we going to do to enable the environment to make this a possibility. To your question, you asked the question about the evidence around education and social entrepreneurship. Yes, there's lots of bodies of work done, especially across Africa. Alan Gray, we have a body of work, and I'm happy to put you in contact with Dr. Pumlani, who's actually done that body of work for us, and I think he'll be a great resource to you, so happy to share that information with you. And then you asked a question about collaboration. I think collaboration must happen at every level. I think if that is not the bedrock on which we agree that we must be able to work with each other, at whatever levels we make the decisions at, I think we'll be at a loss. And so I think as government, you know best how do you work with your counterparts at other departments as well as upwards with the presidency. And then for those of us who provide funding, we find ways to kind of collaborate. We don't do it excellently, but we do try. And then thirdly, it's also about how we're creating enabling environments for they understand the context, they understand the problems, that they're ideating and innovating for a context that they come from. So it's never a top-down approach. It's never, I'll bring you a solution. But if they come from that context, they came up with that solution with others in the room, with their own community members. And that's where you see traction, and that's really where you see change. I think I covered as many as I could. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bengu?
In which, using the systems approach, so we use the health economy around how it can articulate to issues even of rural development. So whether then we are linking to just transition kinds of issues, energy, infrastructure development, and in which we are, I think the proposal that we're going to write, we are likely going to target one of the areas around KZN, either Manget, whether Kwamataba, moving more higher north, in those kind of areas around. How do we use the health economy to essentially build a system and then identify, so whether then is around rural development as a subsystem, but all of it linked within the health economy, so linking to innovation, building of hospitals, building of training and facilitation. So those are the kind of things that we are trying to do. But it's so as I'm saying, it's more of research based. Conditionally on the things that, in fact, DSD is aware of. Firstly, the challenges around doing means testing, administrative cost factors aligned to it, and obviously in this case, the argument that is being made is that if you make it universal, then you claw back through taxing. And so effectively, me and most of the people that are here is that then we become involved, we also receive the UBI, then government claws back that money because well, they tax you and me. So effectively, if you are level 11, 12, 13, 14, and the ultimate one, you know that you are on the upper levels. And so that's the thinking. But at the heart of it is essentially, I think part of it is around what has been a challenge, especially with the SASA issues, the means challenges, and the fact that it will reduce much of the delays that comes around testing whether does this person really qualify. So for instance, on the SRD, in 2020, government leadership, I think you raised an important point around South Africa and China. Even though I will not agree that we have same policies, I don't think we do. I think we do have a policy challenge, one, but we do have a weak state. We just have to accept it. We do have a state that is weak. Around being able, because the success of China, by the way, I'm reading the fourth one now of Xi Jinping that just came out. The strength of China was their ability of government to actually, so what we call development state, to discipline capital. So Deng Xiaoping opened the Chinese economy to the market, but they are able to use a carrot and stick mechanism whenever it is necessary. Right now in Ekurhuleni, we have a company called BAIC that produces cars, right? BAIC. In 2017, I was in China. I was taken to that factory in Beijing. That company started because in 1997, Hyundai invested in China for the first time to build Hyundai, which is, by the way, South Korean. But because China sees that you see here in Johannesburg, most of those people, it's actually it's the state that is driving, even in the diaspora, how people go and start businesses. And so part of it is really around, maybe the significant discussion is around how does our state then lead the kinds of policy that you were saying around integration, building economy, prosperity for all, in those.
Thank you very much. Can you give a hand to Dr. Ben? Ladies and gentlemen, we will not be able to exhaust everything because we have got that time. Me and my chief moderator here, after here we have got something happening. This webinar was built to end at 1 o'clock. And I will allow you to sit here. Don't go anywhere. There's no more seat that is more comfortable than this one. So sit on this one as we move to the next level. I would also like to, I was requested to notify that provinces are here. Limpopo, Free State, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng are also online. But I will do injustice if I don't ask you guys to just, I can allocate acting DG 1 minute each just to say something. I don't know what you want to say, but you have got you must share a minute, all of you. I don't know where to start. I rather start with him because he tends to go. Doctor, 1 minute to say something before we ask the DG to. No, not 1 minute for you. All of you will share 1 minute. Okay, Shirley?
Not on?
Yeah.
No, I am. I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I think this is a start. I think that we have work ahead of us. And as part of the Alan Gray Group, we're willing to do the work and come alongside whoever needs the support to ensure that we support more social entrepreneurs and that we make a dent on that 60% that's really looking to us for that change.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ayo?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. The message is you and I have a role in social entrepreneurship. It's not government, it's not private sector, it's not development partners alone, everyone. And I just want to really say we need to commit ourselves. What role are we going to play? For instance, let me give you just one quick story. About 3 years ago, I went to my secondary school, and I spent just about 30 minutes there, but tears was rolling through my cheeks. Why? Because the condition I found the school was terrible. The water system has completely packed up. So I said now, okay, within 3 years, I'm going to sink a borehole in this school. And within the next week or so, it will be handed over to the management of the school. That is part of social entrepreneurship. And I think we have a role to play. Please.
Thank you. Ms. Kumale?
Thank you, Program.
My question around, maybe the point that maybe like I can make, in an experiment, please give possibilities for failure, because that's always going to be the case. And so maybe to be more flexible around so that we are not heavily discouraged. It's not everything is going to be successful in its initial attempt.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Can we give a hand to our partners? They are giving more hand than you. Can you challenge them? Yeah. No, thanks very much. We appreciate that. I will now call our Acting Director General, the Chief Moderator, for his remarks. Over to you, sir. But you must come this side. Let's give a hand as he's coming.
Thank you. Let me start by appreciating Program Director, the team, and most importantly, the speakers that spoke here today. I'm going to time myself because I want to only speak for 45 minutes. You see, I told you. There we go. I'm kidding. So let me thank the speakers. They've done an excellent job. Would you give them a hand one more time? My hope is that the discussions that have ensued here go beyond discussions and they become actionable items that we can follow through on a weekly, daily, monthly basis, whatever it is. But we must be able to come back and say that on the 13th of October, World Food Day, we had a conversation around social entrepreneurship, focusing on food in the main, and we were able to reap the fruits, no irony, the fruits of these discussions. So we must, the scenario of Isibujwa, under Isibujwa, the country will under-deliver on government targets for 2030, as espoused in the NDP. Despite progress, unemployment will remain 4 times higher than the national development target of 6%. And the per capita GDP will reach only approximately 60% of its target. The Isibujwa scenario